There you go. So let's go to this up top. Meeting duration. Okay, so we're like 8 minutes in. So uh, I'm just going to ask for a moment of silence so our video guys can find a spot to zoom in on, and then we'll start. So we're going to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another jam-packed edition of the King's Report. My name is Frank Scavo. I'm your guide for these times of chaos and tumult. And with Election Day coming upon us in relatively a few short weeks, today we have a special guest who's going to tell us some very valuable information on what we can do as citizens and viewers of the King's Report and these great United States of America. So Linda Szynkowicz is with Stop Voter Fraud or FightVoterFraud.org. Fight Voter Fraud. Yeah. Okay, stop. We're gonna redo. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the King's Report. We have another jam-packed episode today. My name is Frank Scavo. I'm your tour guide through these times of chaos and tumult. And with the election coming upon us in a few short weeks, we have a special guest that's going to give us somewhat of a roadmap on what we as citizens of these great United States can do. So we have Linda Szynkowicz of FightVoterFraud.org. That's FightVoterFraud.org. So welcome, Linda. Thank you for attending this great meeting of the minds that we're going to have. So tell us a little bit about your group and some of the great ideas and actions that you're taking.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Frank, for having me on. We really, really appreciate it. First of all, Fight Voter Fraud has been around for about 5.5 years. We've been changing on everything that we've actually been doing. We spent the last few years doing the deep dives into people we believe violated election laws. We do the work of law enforcement, and I got to tell you, Pennsylvania is one of our states that we have been doing research on. We also look for the deceased voters. We've sent multiple ones into other states with actual proof that the people have been deceased. The worst one we've seen so far is Florida. They have the Lazarus effect. Their people pass away down there and then miraculously come to life 20 years after they died, and they start voting again. We did send a letter to Governor DeSantis and the Attorney General back in January, because in one batch that we sent them of 1,243 deceased voters, 15 random counties, 314 were still voting. That's 21.86%. So we asked or demanded an investigation. Believe it or not, we were granted. The investigation's been going on, and since then we've sent down thousands others with them. Connecticut, we have 7,758 deceased that were on the voter rolls in 2020. 542 of those actually voted, and some voted in person.
Oh my God.
And we're finding this everywhere. People don't understand how this can happen. It can happen in so many different ways. You have the people out there for nefarious means. If your election officials have not removed the voters off the voter rolls that have been deceased, which is mandatory, that's open for them to go and grab their absentee ballots.
You just said removal of these deceased voters is mandatory. Okay, so how is what's happening? You know, how do you discover that they're dead and still voting? Because this is election fraud. This must be stopped. So, you know, how do you guys?
Well, our situation is unique. We spent 2.5 years building an SQL database. Which we have all the voter rolls, we have birthdays, we have Social Security death index, we have the NCOA, the National Change of Address, and a humongous amount of other commercial data that we use. And this is something that your listeners might be interested in. See, we're not the ones that just throw something against the wall to see what sticks.
Right.
We want all of our information to stick. So I have a quick little story on how we came about giving away free to the public the double registered double voters. This is about 2 months ago. We had everything set to roll, but we're a nonprofit. We need funding. So we had decided at that time that any data that anybody wants, $5 a name, whether it's the deceased voters, double registered, double vote, whatever they wanted. So a gentleman had called me from Virginia, and he had asked me about it, and then we got interrupted. The next day we had a conversation. Again, we got interrupted. So that evening I called him. And I will never forget this as long as I live. I call him and I said, Thomas, I said, what 3 counties in Virginia would you like the double registered double voters on? And he said, Linda, I can't afford $5 a name. And I said, well, that's not what I'm saying. For some reason, God is telling me I'm supposed to give you this for free. He starts laughing and he goes, Linda, I'm a minister. I mean, talk about getting hit over the head with the cross, going, okay, God, I get it. As much as we need funding, we're going to give this out for free. We've given the data out to 49 states already, thousands of people. People are working on, they're doing the deep dives. So if your listeners are interested, we have the new updated information. We just updated it a few days ago. They can go to our website, fightvoterfraud.org. You go to data request and you fill out the information. And I personally get that first sheet that comes in. And then we have a process and I forward it along to our data people here in our Connecticut office.
Wonderful.
And it's a few days before you get it. Right now, we are so backed up. If you order today, you might not get it until Tuesday. But still, this is free data on any county you want. If organizations are interested, you can even ask for the entire state. I know our website says we only give out 500 names at a time. No, we're just going to give you everything.
You mean there's more than 500? Oh my God.
Yeah, we have been so blessed with all of this and people taking actions. And I've actually done a few things recently on the double registered, double voted. As I said, we're in Connecticut. Connecticut is one of the worst in the country, if not worst. We're small, but we are really bad. I mean, everything you can imagine for voter integrity, our state goes the opposite way, in a big way. So I sent to, because I was really upset what I saw about the double registered double voters here in Connecticut. And I actually printed out 4-inch binders for the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, chief state's attorney, secretary of state, head of the Democrats and head of the Republicans. And I got it to them probably about 6 weeks ago. Well, I didn't get any acknowledgement from the Democrats or the Republicans. The secretary of state said, eventually told me that, they were in receipt of it. But the chief state's attorney's office was actually going to take action, which was phenomenal. I had 2 phone calls with them, one 38 minutes long. All they said was, Linda, the 2016 double voters, because of the statute of limitations, we won't be able to go after. And I said, that's fine. The fact that you're going to do something. A week and a half later, I get a letter from them telling me they have turned it over to the state election enforcement, which here in Connecticut is the most useless organization for election integrity in the state. Did I tell you they're useless? I mean, I've got a history with them. I haven't sent them anything in 3 years because they never do anything. I'm always right. They're always wrong. So that got me thinking that I could not now pass on those double voters in the federal elections to the FBI here in Connecticut. I was like, okay, the first thing they're going to do is ask me, did you give it to the SEEC, the state election enforcement? I would have to say yes because I know it was turned over to them. So what I did about 3 or 4 weeks ago is we researched the double voters in North Carolina, West Virginia, and Maryland. And on a Sunday morning, I hopped in my car and I drove the 14 hours to the FBI in North Carolina. Unexpected, of course.
15 hours.
I spent 2 hours with them, delivered it. The next day, I was in West Virginia. They were really nice, by the way. And then I drove the 5.5 hours to the Baltimore, Maryland office, which I'll tell you, it was really hot. It was 96 degrees. One of my phones had already overheated in the car. And they were going to send me on my way, the security. And I told them, I said, well, what am I supposed to do with my evidence? I said, do I leave it with you? And they're like, no, no. So they eventually got two agents to come down and meet with me, and we got in the interview room. And I said, so you guys got the short end of the stick, huh? And they said, no, we're actually the head of the election integrity for the state of Maryland for the FBI. So I got to the people that I needed to get to, and they were so thrilled over the evidence that I brought, plus the thumb drive with the raw data and everything printed out, coded in page protectors. So it was a very good meeting. And I did ask them because they had talked about when they do their press conference, when they arrest the people. I just asked if I could be there, and they said yes. So mind you, I have delivered to 3 FBIs evidence of double voters, which is mandatory, 1 to 5 years in jail. I think it's $5 to a $10,000 fine. I mean, it's crazy. So get back to Connecticut, and I send out a press release. Never seen a press release like this before. I did get some flack from some people down in Washington wanting to know why we were boasting about giving evidence to the FBI. It was so ridiculous. I didn't even bother responding because you know why we did it. We need to let people know there are going to be consequences for their actions.
Yes, exactly.
So we've also been researching. I'm not sure if we got, yeah, I think Pennsylvania might be one of them. The double voters that we're aware of, we've actually been doing the research, and I know I will be taking another road trip. That was a crazy one. It was 1,736 miles by myself, 31 hours of driving in 2.5 days. But every once in a while, I kind of do stuff like that. You know, you get fed up with something,
Linda,
and it's just like,
you're a patriot, you're an angel, you are,
oh,
you know what, just phenomenal. What I've heard so far in these few minutes is like, get out of the way. Here comes Linda. She has the evidence, and it's not conjecture and hearsay. It's like, why do these things exist? And because they do exist, Linda's going to take action. And I'm hoping that our listeners and viewers will do the same, because if this is so prevalent and Linda is doing this and she has the resources for us to go ahead and do it, Linda, we're going to make a great team here.
oh no, that would be great. Like I said, have your listeners, request the data. Something else that I just did in the past week, because now that you know who I am and what I do, I didn't just hit the hornet's nest.
Cool.
I stirred it. That's why this past week has just been insane in my office. And this is something your listeners might also want to look into. I don't know the law in Pennsylvania as far as your election officials. But here in Connecticut, there are very strict guidelines that they have to have certification within 2 years. They have to be recertified every year after. And another mandatory thing is doing the canvassing and the sign off on the sheet from the election officials. Well, I tried getting the list of the election officials from the state of Connecticut back on July 9th. And I always have a trail with my stuff. I sent the email to the Secretary of State, Stephanie Thomas, the head of elections, the head of the Democrats, and the head of the Republicans. Could you please send me when the registrars, because that's what they're called in Connecticut, were hired, when they were certified, and when they were recertified? Thank you for my query, etc. It took a month. And they sent me a list that was missing half the information. I'm even finding out more of the information that was missing. So what we did last week is here in Connecticut, we have 169 towns. We sent FOIA, Freedom of Information requests, to every mayor and every attorney within the towns and cities. So it's 338 people we sent out. And then to boot, on Tuesday, my assistant sent an email, because we had all the emails for all the mayors and selectmen and who was ever in charge. Talk about a fury of stuff going on. Because here's the thing. If they're not certified within 2 years, they can't run an election. By law, they can't. And the only ones who can replace them are the deputy registrars, who would also have to be certified. And if your registrar is not certified, do you really think your deputy's recertified? So basically, what would happen is towns would not be able to vote in the election because they don't have registrars that are certified. So I had a mayor contact me a couple of days ago, really upset about this. And he goes, well, Linda, then what's going to happen? And I said, listen, I don't want to stop the elections. I wanted to get the attention of everybody that they're not doing their jobs. They're not following state statute. And he says, well, what could happen? And I said, well, so the governor has to declare a state of emergency to then have the legislators come back into special session to allow non-certified election officials to be able to do the November election. And it all points to the Secretary of State not doing their job. And it has been unbelievable, the stuff that I've uncovered. And even with the FOI stuff coming in, because you have to be compliant, I am getting the ones that are trying to cover up that they are not certified. Don't send me a 2022 ED 632, which is the canvassing unsigned. It's 2024 and it needs both signatures, which means they didn't do it. So as we're going through this mess, and I got to tell you, it is one heck of a mess. We'll find out who's doing their jobs, who's not doing their jobs, and what's going to happen here. So again, your election officials, I'm sure there's some statute that says what certifications they have to have, and continuing certifications, because laws are constantly changing. Be nice to find out if you've got people who aren't getting certified, doing jobs that they're not allowed to do by law.
You know, Linda, I'm floored with your testimony. Okay, start with mayors. They're elected, and it's not just a title. Like, the mayor has to institute these policies, and it's at the ground level. And never mind the mayors. Now, as you go up the chain, the Secretary of State, the governor, they don't enforce any election code at all. But I'm going to tell you about Pennsylvania very briefly. We have election code, election statute, and recently, Al Schmidt, who's the director of elections, Secretary of State, he sends out guidance that's exactly opposite of the written code. So they say, do this, which is not what the law says to do. So, Linda, we Americans, two things. We tolerate too much and don't demand accountability. So that's a double whammy. So we know what they're doing, and we're not stopping them from doing the wrong thing. So let me ask you this. What triggered Linda? What took Linda from the sidelines and made Linda into the absolute warrior that she is today? What was the tipping point?
The tipping point was back in 2024, I actually ran for state rep here in Middletown, Connecticut. And I was wet behind the ears. I saw stuff that didn't make any sense.
Yes.
2016, I met my first ballot harvester, still didn't really understand, but I was sending out to newly registered voters my information. I would get it every week sent to me. Saturdays, we do the mailing, and a week and a half later, they're coming back. They don't live here. They don't live there. So it wasn't until 2018, when I ran again, because it's every 2 years, that I figured out what they were doing. And I spent during the campaign over 100 hours putting together, I think it was 642 people for their absentee ballot request forms were either invalid or illegal because I had been tipped off. I could not get the help from anybody.
Nobody.
Mind you, I knocked on doors for over a year. So I contacted the chief state's attorney's office. Well, they sent me to, they said, we don't have the resources. Go to the state election enforcement, which, by the way, they're absolutely useless. So a friend of mine told me the FBI is in charge during federal elections.
Mm.
So I contacted the local FBI office. I actually happened to know that agent at the time. And we set up for me to deliver 6 inches of hard evidence. They called 8 days before the election, and I got a call at 7 in the morning telling me they had to cancel the appointment. And I said, well, do we need to change the time, location? And they said, no, it's going to look like we're interfering with an election. And
Oh,
I tell people that was I mean, I was crying. Honestly, it takes a lot to make me cry. And I was crying on the phone, begging the agent just to take my evidence, and they were refusing to even take it. So after that, that's how that moment,
oh,
probably at 10 after 7 in the morning, is
oh,
when Fight Voter Fraud was born. I figured somebody's got to do something. I can't get anybody. And you know what a quiet, shy person I am. And if I can't get any help, what am I going to do? So we started off with Fight Voter Fraud. I won a federal lawsuit. We didn't even advertise it. We were just doing little things. Then we started looking into the individuals. But another key thing was in 2020, November of 2020, we had already put, and you can find it on our website, is our Report It app. We had geofenced Connecticut that anybody on your phone, you can download the app and you can be anonymous. You can send us pictures, videos of anything that's going on as far as election integrity. What I didn't know is that if you went to my website, it can come from anywhere in the country, if not world. So about a few days before the election in November of 2020, I start getting all these reports coming in from all over the country. Then on election day in the videos, I mean, by day 2, I was really freaking out over this. I'm like, I've got really legitimate stuff. So I contacted the Justice Department, which, they'll call me back in 48 hours. That's what, 4 years ago? But anyway. But then I also contacted that agent at the FBI. And I told her what I had, and she said they would accept the most egregious ones and they would disseminate them to their local offices, which they did over 2.5 months of my sending. But the key was this wonderful woman in Virginia who contacted me and asked me if I had any in North Carolina. And at the time, I had about 2 dozen. And she said, well, her attorney friend is stationed in North Carolina. We connected an hour later, and then they asked me to have all the swing states.
mm-hmm.
Now, they were working with Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani.
Rudy, right?
So now all these were literally coming in every 5 minutes. I was getting one from somewhere. So, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them had come in. Fast forward really quickly to August of 2021 when I was invited down to Washington by the attorney, and she wanted me to meet with a few people, which I couldn't understand. And she changed the location because more people wanted to meet me. And I told her, I said, Mary, I said, I don't understand why these people want to meet me. And she said, oh, we forgot to tell you. Between 70 and 75% of the affidavits that Trump talks about started with us. Started with Fight Voter Fraud. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't realize what big a percentage. And we still have it running, Report It. And I have forwarded things along to different states. We've been pretty quiet about it. We don't need to take credit. Some of the stuff on the news was really neat. It came from us in Arizona. There's other things that were forced to happen from stuff we brought forward. But we've just been focused on cleaning the voter rolls. Our motto is 1 vote for 1 legal voter. I don't care what party you're from.
Right.
I mean, just don't vote. Like one guy in North Carolina, in 2020, he was registered in 3 different counties and in Florida. He voted 4 times in 2020.
Oh, what?
Honestly, it's like
election in history. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the stuff that we have come across, and we have ways of being able to prove it. And what I did yesterday for the first time is we actually had a webinar, a 15-minute webinar,
Oh
that
my,
when you have gotten the data on, what it's about, what you can do with it, and then we actually give you our secret list of websites that are free where you can verify the information. And, so we did it. That one was yesterday. Today is actually on the letter, which I'll talk about very briefly in just one moment. But we are setting up another training. I'm not sure if they put it up yet. I think it's going to be the 26th. It's
26.
15 minutes. The 26th. Yeah,
Ladies
for
and
15
gentlemen, be
minutes.
advised, just the template is going to be on the 26th. So
At 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you're going to be able to sign up, and we will go through it. And then only those on the webinar will get emailed our secret list, which we ask you not to post.
yes, please
This is
don't
stuff,
share
and if
with the
right,
app.
and if somebody posts it, we will not do webinars anymore. I mean, we are very protective of everything that we have.
Ladies
So
and
the other,
I'm just
oh,
going to
go ahead.
little plug for you here. We're talking with Linda Szynkowicz from Fight Voter Fraud, and just put .org at the end. So this is an action item, and you should do this as soon as, if not right now during your viewing of this broadcast. Go there and sign up, because what Linda's done, she's done all the work. I mean, she's got the template, she's got the mousetrap on how to catch these guys. So this is just a warning. We're going to go over, because we're going to let this interview time out. We're going to go right to the end, because I am floored with what you've uncovered and what you're doing to counteract these elections that are so reliable and so trustworthy, that aren't. It's the lie, it's the narrative. So Linda, please continue.
So one of the other things that an action item that people can do is, a couple of weeks ago, I got an email that had a letter that the RNC Counsel's office had sent to the Secretary of State in Nevada. It concerns how the Secretary of State can actually get the information from the federal government on, drum roll please, non-US citizens.
Oh,
Non-US citizens that are out there and on the voter rolls. My letter is the sample letter where it says request your sample letter. If you put that information in, it'll send you the letter I sent to the Secretary of State, because I'm not politically correct. I also included illegal immigrants in my letter, non-citizens and illegal immigrants, because that's what some of them are.
Linda,
And I also...
So I've seen these charts that show illegal. Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro now has motor voter registration. So when you're an illegal, if you go to get a driver's license, you're instantly registered to vote. So I saw numbers like Florida and other states, like maybe 1,000, 5,000, 12, whatever. Pennsylvania right now has over 600,000 of these motor voter registrations that are most likely tied to the influx of the 20 million illegals that are coming into America. So have you heard any numbers on Pennsylvania?
I've heard a number, but I can't say it because I can't remember the source that I got it, and I always source things that I say. Hypothetically, it can be twice that, which is huge. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example on how important every vote is. In 2018 in Connecticut, 22 races were determined by less than 100 votes. Some of them were determined by 2 and 3 votes. That's your local town government, your mayor, your board of ed, your planning and zoning, dog catcher, whomever it is. That's what we should be really concerned about. And that's why the voter rolls are supposed to be cleaned. Yes. You talked about the motor voter law. Basically, what it did back in 1993 was allow the states to have motor vehicle departments and bureaus register people to vote. But they had to make sure that only US citizens, only people over 18, that there were no dead voters, and the voter rolls had to be cleaned, which if you've moved, You should not be on the voter list anymore. If you haven't voted in 4 years, you're supposed to have a canvassing that goes on and a whole bunch of other things. In Connecticut, I said back from 2020, the 2.505 million voters that were registered at that time, that at least 500,000 died, moved, or never existed. Right now, I can prove about 420,000. I'm not kidding. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we have this huge issue. But again, people can, send their letters out. I also put for the letters, one for your governor, your Republican caucus, your Democratic caucus. So when somebody says there's nothing that can be done, the Secretary of State can't do it. Yes, there is. There absolutely is.
We're going to have to force them to do it. This is a force move, right? Because they're not calling Linda or I to say, hey, what can we do, right? So Linda's telling us, write the letter, because this is going to force them to do their job that we're already paying for. So continue, Linda.
Right. So along the same lines, like I said, the way I do things and those FOI letters that I had sent out to the mayors and to the attorneys, the one who's really in charge of the registrars, but I wanted to make sure the heads of every city understood the gravity of this issue.
Yes.
So I, with everybody freaking out, I accomplished that. We've only had 2 so far. 2 attorneys have declined giving us the information. So we are going to be sending certified mail today to those registrars to get them on. And they're ones we're pretty sure are not following the law. So anyway, and we do have another initiative that we will be starting. And once we're ready, we will have it up online. But it's something that I wanted to do like 3 years ago, but never had the opportunity. It's when Ken Cuccinelli, our former Deputy of Homeland Security and the former AG of Virginia, we had spoken because we had been told about 2 young men in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that were going through the process to become U.S. citizens, but all of a sudden immigration found that they voted. And we wanted to see what we could do for them. Apparently the Democrats had told him it was okay to go in and vote. So Ken explained to us, which we all know, I mean, there's nothing you can do. Once you vote and you're not a U.S. citizen, you are automatically deported. Deported. Doesn't matter who told you what.
We're going to have a lot of boats and buses.
Yeah, there is no recourse. So here were these 2 young men that were working and wanted to become U.S. citizens. And I'll tell you, everybody, if you have never been to a swearing in of U.S. citizens, you have to go. I went about 4 years ago. My daughter's friend's cousin and father became U.S. citizens. There were 56 countries represented that day. I have never seen so many American flags and smiles between the judge who's swearing them in and everybody else. They accomplished the American dream. So what we're looking to do right now is actually do a 30-second PSA, being compassionate, letting people know you really don't want to vote. If you're registered, unregistered, if you ever want to be a U.S. citizen. So we want to do this in a compassionate way. I have an immigration attorney who is actually writing the script, and I'll have that on Monday. And then I asked her to put together a one-sheeter, not one that is going to make it look like we're trying to intimidate them, but one as it should be with the compassion. You may not understand this. You may not realize this.
And again,
so that's our next thing.
We're not the government. They should be doing this, but we're going to come up on a hard break in 1 minute and 14 seconds. So Linda, I just want to definitely thank you for what you're doing. These are all things that I recommend that our people rewatch this interview. They're going to watch it once, watch it twice, because you're going to pick up things that Linda's doing. So in our last minute, because we have a hard break, what do you say, Linda? I mean, you're advertising.
Everybody can take an action, whether it's writing a letter, doing the research, getting the data and sending it to people that you know within your community to work on. Keep your eyes out. You know who's passed away on your street. You know who sold their house. Check the voter rolls. Challenge on election day. Like I said, but go to our website, fightvoterfraud.org. And something else, we'll give away the free data as long as we're financially able. So, if you want, you can also donate to us. That
And
would be
donate,
extremely
right? Listen, you can't be on the sidelines. Linda's going to put together an ad that says illegal aliens don't vote because you're going to get deported. Like, this is overdue. So, this is great stuff. So, Linda, I'm going to ask you if we could have you back in a couple weeks.